Last week, Victor Wembanyama signed a 5-year, $252 million contract extension to stay in San Antonio. And for about 12 hours, everybody agreed that it was great. Then the NBA Players Association got involved. Then Kendrick Perkins went on TV. Then there were articles and video opinions everywhere. The deal that felt like a Spurs loyalty story somehow became one of the more genuinely divisive decisions a superstar has made in years. Here's where people are landing right now. Camp 1 says Wembanyama's a genius. He left $50 million on the table. He bought his team the flexibility to build a dynasty around him. He kept his escape hatch with a player's option in year 5. Smart, calculated, business decision. Now Camp 2 says that Wembanyama just handed every owner in the league a weapon. That the best young player in basketball voluntarily took less money sets a precedent that will be used against every other star in the next negotiation. And the Players Association is apparently furious about it. Now both camps seem to think they have a point. And that's exactly what makes this the most interesting contract story of the offseason. Now, because I like to play devil's advocate, I'm going to break down both sides, and then I'll tell you where I actually land on it. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Front Office Eye. I'm Hector. If you're new here, this channel is about watching sports the way a GM does, and understanding the numbers and the motives behind the decisions that drive a franchise. Right now, there is no better live case study than what just happened in San Antonio. So let's build this from the ground up. All right, so the actual numbers. 5 years, $252 million. Maximum rookie scale contract extension. Includes a player option in the 5th season. Now, if you don't know what a player option is, it's pretty simple. The player option means that it's his choice. He's going to have all the power after that 2031 season. He'll be able to tell the Spurs, sure, I'm going to keep playing, I'll fulfill my contract, or no, I'm going to turn it down, forego my contract, and you guys are going to either have to sign me a new one, or I'm going to test free agency and see who else is going to pay me. Now, this is the 3rd largest rookie extension in NBA history, behind only Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley, who each signed for $269 million. Now, the first thing to know about this is that the new deal doesn't kick in until 2027-28. It starts around $43.5 million per year, and it goes up from there with a $57.5 million player option waiting at the end. So $252 million sounds enormous because it is. But the number that matters here isn't $252 million. That's the number that Wembanyama was eligible for. And to get the full picture, we need to understand why and why he said no. All right, so a quick foundation. So the NBA Max contracts run on a tier system based on years of service. Players with 0 to 6 years in the league can earn up to 25% of the team's max salary cap. 7 to 9 years are eligible for 30%, and then stars that are 10 or more years in the league can get up to 35% of that team's salary cap. Wemby's entering his 4th season. By default, he's a 25% player. That's $252 million. So if you were here last video, you know that the league has something called bird rights. Well, the homages don't stop there. The NBA also has the Rose Rule, named after Derrick Rose. Back in 2008, Derrick Rose was considered to be somewhat of a second coming to the Bulls. He came out of Memphis, the 1st overall draft pick, but he was a born and raised Chicago kid, and this guy was a phenom coming out of the gates. I mean, so much so that the kid won MVP in his 3rd year in the league. He's the youngest to ever do it at 22 years old. But because he was on a rookie contract, he was only eligible for so much money. But you can imagine how, with that kind of hype and trajectory, the fans, the players, everybody else, they thought he deserved a lot more. So with respect to that, the Rose Rule says if you win MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, or you make an All-NBA team in the right window, you get an early jump from 25% to 30%. Now this past season, Wembanyama won Defensive Player of the Year, made the All-NBA first team, and he finished 3rd in MVP voting. He averaged 25 points, 11.5 rebounds, 3.1 assists, and 3.1 blocks. He also led the Spurs to a 62-20 record in an NBA Finals appearance before many thought was even plausible. He checked virtually every box he needed to be eligible for that 30% tier. But he signed for $252 million. $51 million less than what he was entitled to. All right, so here's where the debate starts. The front office argument for this deal is genuinely strong, and it comes down to one thing, the apron era. Now, if you watched episode 1 of this channel, you know the NBA's second apron is where real restriction kicks in. Once a team crosses that line, they lose big privileges like the mid-level exception, trade tactics like aggregating contracts, and future draft picks get frozen. So they're basically locked into whatever roster they have. Matter of fact, we actually just watched this play out in real time. Jaylen Brown got traded in part because of his 35% max contract. An NBA All-Star player, not to mention a Finals MVP, moved not because his team didn't want him, but because his contract killed the roster flexibility around him. This is incredibly important for what San Antonio needs to do next. Steph Castle and Dylan Harper are the other two pieces of what looks like an emerging big three in San Antonio. Steph Castle followed up his 2025 Rookie of the Year campaign by setting career highs across the board this season. He had 16 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds on average. He improved both his field goal percentage and his three-point percentage. Steph's the kind of two-way guard that you see on championship rosters. Harper, the number 2 pick in the 2025 draft, spent his rookie year coming off the bench before he broke out and became an absolute dog in the playoffs. And he's only 20 years old. Both of them are eventually going to cost max money. Both of them need to get paid. And the Spurs also have De'Aaron Fox on a 4-year, $221 million extension. If Wemby had taken the $303 million, the Spurs would have been staring down second apron territory before they even signed anyone else, making signing both Castle and Harper nearly impossible without gutting the roster. The $51 million gap isn't just money. In the apron era, the $51 million is the difference between a team that can maneuver and a team that's frozen. And then there's a player option. In 2031, Wemby decides. By then, he'll have the service time to qualify for 30% automatically without needing the Rose Rule. So he took the discount during the building years, kept his leverage, and positioned himself for an even bigger deal if the Spurs don't deliver. He's essentially telling the Spurs, here's $50 million. You got 4 years to build me a championship roster. That's not charity. That's a chess move. All right, now here's the other side, and it's worth taking seriously. The NBPA, or the NBA Players Association, which if you don't know is a union that looks after the players' interests and negotiates collective bargaining agreements with the league, is apparently pissed off about the deal. And the reason is way bigger than Wembanyama's bank account. The Players Association believes that players shouldn't be punished for their success. The Rose Rule exists specifically to reward players who achieve the highest level, MVP, DPOY, All-NBA. It was negotiated into the CBA to protect players like Wembanyama, and he voluntarily walked away from it. Kendrick Perkins went on ESPN and pointed out what he sees as an obvious flaw, that Wembanyama, by taking less, is essentially telling every owner in the league that their franchise player might do the same. That the pressure to sacrifice for the team is now a negotiating tool backed by the most prominent young player in the sport. Then Vincent Goodwill ranted that players shouldn't have to foot the bill in place of the owners. He tried to make an argument about Steph Castle or Dylan Harper having to feel the pressure of taking a pay cut now too. And that's a labor argument in plain terms. But here's the thing. When a player takes $50 million less, the owner doesn't pocket that savings and frame it on the wall. It gets redirected into roster construction, which means the owner's still spending, just with more flexibility in how they deploy the money. So the obvious comparison being made right now is to Jalen Brunson. He signed a team-friendly extension with the Knicks a year before he knew he was going to become worth far more. And obviously the Knicks used that flexibility to build a championship team. The Knicks won. Brunson got his ring. But he left real money behind in the process. Now, there is a very real argument that the players negotiated the Rose Rule for exactly this situation, and Wembanyama opting out of it, however strategically, weakens the collective position of every player who comes after him in negotiations. Alright, so both sides laid out, here's where I land on it. The NBPA is pissed, but they did their job. At their core, the union is built and put in place so that the players have the option to choose. They have the power to negotiate their contracts. Just because Wemby took less money doesn't mean that Steph Castle's going to have to take less money, Dylan Harper's going to take less money, AJ DeBonta, when it's his turn, is going to have to take less money. None of that means that anybody has to do anything. That's the essence of the union. That's the essence of the collective bargaining agreement, that the power lies in the hands of the player. Wemby took less money because he chose to, because he wants the opportunity to build a roster that can win a championship. Now, if down the road he figures that he can have a better chance in New York or Minnesota or LA or somewhere else, he has the power to negotiate another contract somewhere else. That's what the NBPA is supposed to be concerned with, the power to the player. That doesn't go away with Wemby taking less money. What Wemby did is what every smart person does when the rules are stacked against him in a certain way. He made the decision that gives him the best chance of winning a championship, and he kept his leverage. The player option is the part that doesn't get talked about enough in this conversation. He's not just taking a discount and hoping for the best. He's taking a discount with a 5-year deadline attached to it. Build the team, San Antonio. I'll give you the ammunition. But if you don't deliver, 2031, I'm out. I can sign for the same 30% elsewhere. That's not selfless. That's a general manager mentality from a 22-year-old. And then here's the broader picture. The Spurs went 62-20 this season. They beat OKC in the Western Conference Finals and they advanced to the NBA Finals in Wembanyama's first playoff run. That starting group of Wemby, Fox, Castle, Vassell, and Champagnie went 21-3 together. They were the second best lineup in the league behind Oklahoma City. This isn't a rebuild that needs patience. This is a contender that needs finishing touches right now. And Wembanyama just handed his front office $51 million worth of tools to go find him. Now, whether the Spurs actually use that flexibility wisely is the real question. But if you've been following San Antonio for the last 30 years, you know that their front office knows what it takes to build a championship roster. Either way, you can be sure that I'm going to be tracking that on this channel all season long. Alright, so here's where we are. Victor Wembanyama signed for $252 million. He left $51 million on the table. Players around the league are unhappy about what it signals. Media figures are debating whether it's genius or a dangerous precedent. And honestly, the answer is that it could be a little bit of both. It's genius for the Spurs right now. It's potentially complicated for player leverage in the long run. But if you're a Spurs fan, you should be thrilled. Your franchise player just made a front office decision on his own contract. He looked at the apron era, looked at Castle and Harper, looked at the championship window in front of him, and decided $252 million and a player option was a smarter play than $303 million and a frozen roster. We gotta remember, $252 million is the discounted version. There is a very real chance that Wembanyama earns $1 billion in NBA salary before it's all said and done. He's 22 years old. He's got time. And that's not even to mention all the money he's going to make on endorsements. The question isn't whether he made enough money. The question is whether the Spurs honor the deal that he made with them. Not the contract, the handshake. Build the team, win the championship, make the sacrifice worth it. That's the story we're watching now. And we'll be right here breaking down every move. If this is your first video here, episode 1 breaks down exactly how the NBA salary cap works. Everything I talked about today only makes sense once you understand the foundation. That link is in the description. Now, if you like this type of content and you want to keep gaining that GM perspective, like and subscribe to the channel, because we're going to be breaking down moves like this across the sports world so that we can all have a better understanding of what makes our favorite teams tick. Drop your take in the comments. Is Wemby a genius or did the NBPA get it right? I want to know where you land. See you in the next one.